Hey guys, it's Mizzy, and I'm a mixed girl in a mixed up world. Today I have an interview with Logan. I'd like to welcome him to my show. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me, Missy. I'm Logan. I'm 19. I'm a college sophomore. I'm from New England, and I currently go to college in New England. And I'm a Chinese American who was born and raised here in the United States.
Oh, very nice. Um, so you said you're a sophomore?
Yes.
Nice. How has it been learning in this environment with COVID?
It's very challenging. I can't keep my focus as well as I would in a lecture hall. And because I'm a sophomore, I have I've been there and I've experienced both for about the equal amount of time. And yeah, I have to say the in-person is a lot better. The only thing I could say is that the online, we get to, like, everything's recorded, so we can easily go back and review things if we missed it, or also all the exams are open note now because there's no way to stop you from cheating without them putting a lockdown browser and like actually looking at you, but they don't want to do that. So they just made everything open note. Professors have been all across the board, but even like the ones who have been the least, I guess, sensitive have still been very accommodating. So it's just from accommodating to more accommodating. So I guess I can't complain that much. The only thing is that the university shaved off 20% of our semester to fit a third one in.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
so everything's condensed, so that makes that
Mhm.
stinks. That makes it hard. Okay, so with everything that's going on right now, with all the vicious attacks on the Asian community and the violence and just the disrespect, how are you doing?
There's a lot of levels to how I'm doing. On a personal, like just me, egocentric level, I am fine. My personal safety is not threatened because I don't go out that much. And I'm in a position where I don't have to go out that much. I'm very privileged to be in this position where I can, stay home and just, lock down. In an identity level, it's not exactly surprising that this is happening, given that there's such a long history of anti-Asianness and specifically xenophobia in the US, dating all the way back to the Chinese Exclusion Act, all the way through, that went from 1882 to 1945, I believe, where even, we had no birthright citizenship. And it just continues on kind of in a covert way that's like so sneaky that you can't call it out, because the people who are perpetuating all of this will just like gaslight you and say, I wasn't talking about that. I would there's a deeper level to what they're saying, and they'll rise back up to the surface level, so it's only what's explicitly stated, and they'll say, oh, I wasn't being racist. And yeah, growing up, I had people pull their eyes back at me. That became not a surprise anymore, pretty normalized. I had people saying, Ching Chong Long, I speak Chinese. What else is there? They like, whenever I bring in lunch, this is for any ethnic person, they're like, oh my gosh, it stinks. And it was dumplings. And now you see them on their Instagram stories. Look what I got, dim sum. And it's not exactly surprising. It's just like, I like to compare it to a pimple. Like, when a pimple's starting, you can tell it's there. And now the pimple has popped.
Yeah.
And we see all this ugly disgustingness.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
As you were saying that, it's like it was making me tear up, because I've dealt with, racism for all my life, and it's like sometimes you don't see or think about. I've often wondered how the Asian community, like how bad it was, and if you guys got the same stuff that the Black community got and things like that, because which goes along with one of the things I'm going to say in a few minutes. It's not talked about as much in the grand scheme of things. The Asian community might talk about it, but it's not talked about in public as much. And I've often wondered, how it is, on your end.
Well, there is a thing that most of us are recent immigrants, and for that reason we want to keep our heads down and not cause trouble because we're trying to get a foothold in this country, and I think that's a contributor. Another one is how traditionally in the West they've portrayed like East Asians specifically as weak, feminine, other, exotic, which results in the emasculation of our men, the desexualization of our men, and then the hypersexualization of our women, which it's kind of unique because you have that kind of, it's a two-way pole, like it's in the same direction, but then because you're going from opposite ends of the spectrum, it neutralizes one and then accentuates the other.
Yeah.
And to the point about the Black community, it's people will try to compare both our struggles, and it's just not possible because they're completely different things. You cannot compare them, and anyone who would seek to do so is pretty foolish in my book, because usually it's just because we have it better, I have it worse than you, and it's a point of playing the oppression Olympics, and no one wins that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I told you that I had a long thing that'll take me a minute to get through. It kind of goes along with what you were saying, but also, so I met you on TikTok. I saw one of your videos that you had asked a question along the lines of, is it okay to call, Black people my brothers and sisters? And on TikTok, it's such a unique social experiment, I guess you'd say.
Right.
Because I didn't realize how unless you get on the crazy fringe side of TikTok, people are for the most part, are so supportive. And I mean, you'll have strangers that tell you that I love you, that you've never even spoken to, or they've never commented on your post before. And so it's weird because I personally, like, if you said my sister, I wouldn't take any offense of that. But in the real world, I don't think it's right, but I could see where some people might take that wrong, but they shouldn't. And we should look at each other more. Granted, we don't have the same experiences, but we experience a lot of the same issues. And also through history, with the way things have been set up with white supremacy, they've kind of pitted us against each other by calling the Asian community the model minority, and by saying, like you had said, that the Asian community is weak. They tend to be known as meek and weak, and that's what has been put upon you guys. And for the Black community, we're loud and we're obnoxious, and we're always causing problems because we're fighting for our rights. And you guys are the model minority because you aren't out there like we are. And like you said, there are reasons for that, why some people might not be out there. But that's one thing I not like of what's going on right now. But I'm so happy to see so many of you guys standing up, fighting for yourselves. It's been a beautiful, aspect of this heinous acts that are going on it's been beautiful to watch. But they've pitted us against each other so much. And I wish that we all could step back and say, wait a minute, we would be stronger together. And you know, we can learn from you and you guys can learn from us, and we could support you because like right now your community is going through something horrible. And, you know, when our community goes through something horrible, we can be there for each other. And I think a lot of people are seeing that with what happened over the summer and then now what's happening now. But I wish it was more. I've often wondered why, you know, the Black community, the Asian community, the Latinx community, and even the Jewish community haven't come together more, because we're fighting the same enemy. I mean, granted, yes, sometimes, and I apologize for like some of the attacks on the Asian community have been Black men or Black people perpetrating these attacks, and I'm angry about that because they should know better. They should know we shouldn't be doing this. And as a Black person, I apologize for that. It's wrong. But what are your feelings on that, about us coming together more, and also how the white supremacy has taken us and made us to fight each other more than be there for each other?
All right.
I know that was a lot to unpack.
Yeah. So I guess the first part of my response would be, after going back to the Chinese Exclusion Act, after they repealed that in 1945, they set specific quotas of education quotas. So only highly skilled, highly educated people, workers, could come in from East Asia and also South Asia, India. And that set an artificial kind of culture, not culture like a community's culture, but like I'm talking about like the biological sense. So like, you know,
Yeah.
growing a culture of these highly successful, highly intelligent Asians. And so up until, well, so personally, I don't fall into that because my grandparents were the ones who came over, and they had like a middle school education.
Mm-hmm.
And they came over and they, you know, went through the usual route of entrepreneurship, doing a Chinese restaurant, and which was, you know, pretty, it put food on the table. It provided for their retirement. So it's all that they could have, you know, wished for. But yes, I would like to say that this model minority myth was constructed from day one by white supremacy, by white supremacists, and really cruelly used to turn these two groups. Of course, this is a little bit reductionist, but it turns the Black and Asian groups against each other so they can fight while white supremacy remains on top.
Exactly.
And then as for oh yes, also the model minority myth completely erases Southeast Asians from the equation in their struggles, because they have a different story. They came over largely as refugees after the U.S. waged war in their home countries, you know, laid waste to many towns and cities and villages. And so to say that all Asians are smart and successful and hardworking, it really erases the struggle of these Southeast Asians, and it cuts off or shames them for seeking resources in order to support themselves when they need it, when they might need it. And about the point that you said that many Black men are perpetrating these racial hate crimes, I like to speak to that because I believe I heard 90% of the racial hate crimes that have happened in 2020 were actually done by white men. They just don't get reported.
Yeah.
Or you see so many times where the police won't classify it as a hate crime, so they can't be included in the statistics. And then whenever a Black man does the crime, it's all over the news.
Yeah.
They dig up his history, they go far back. But when it's a white man,
which is putting us against each other again.
It's
so
just
one ignorant person doing something they shouldn't be doing And I'm not inexcusable, but they, just like there was a guy in New York, I don't know if it was New York, but just a few days ago,
Yep.
it was a Black man who did it.
Yep. And yeah, the invisible hand is still there. It's very much there, sowing division and discord between our communities. And it's just incredible how they blow up all these narratives with when it's a Black perpetrator. Another thing I've realized is after the shooting in Atlanta, we got so much coverage about the shooter himself. He went to youth group. He was a Christian. His dad was a pastor. He had mental health issues. He was battling his demons. He had a sex addiction, but close to radio silence on the victims.
Yeah.
At least for that 48-hour period right after the attack. And I'm just like, why? Why, when it's a white person, we always go into their backstory to humanize them. But then when it's anybody else, he's a monster. They dig up his criminal history. They dig up any of like these testimonials they can get about, oh, this person was abusive. And it's kind of incredible because we saw that because there was a shooting, although how this is tragic, but there was a shooting in Colorado where the shooter was not a white man. And then we can see all of these things in action right there. We have a nice side-by-side comparison. And it just really goes to show how white supremacy is by no means dead, and it's not just maintained by the KKK or the Proud Boys. It's maintained by just white people being themselves, just going about business as normal.
Yeah, definitely. I fully agree with that. And they still have not categorized what happened in Atlanta as a hate crime.
Mm-hmm.
That was a hate crime. Mm-hmm. Whether if he went in there, which we all know that's not why he did it, but, or at least we all suspect, I know in my heart, I'm sure you know in your heart why he did it. Even if he had done it because he had a sex addiction, that's still a hate crime because it was against women. He did it because, so it's just,
there is no excuse. He has checked so many of the boxes against these marginalized identities that you cannot not classify it as a hate crime.
And it's disgusting when things like that aren't put in, they'll put us in boxes, but they won't put that in the correct box that it should be put in. And it's not right.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know anybody who has been attacked, or do you have any family members or, know anyone who's been attacked?
Fortunately, I personally do not. However, my grandmother likes to go on walks around her neighborhood. And I've talked to her. I said, don't you feel like any danger at all? You feel completely safe walking around? Because she has a lot of people. It's a highly populated area. And she said, no, I say hi to all the neighbors. They always wave back to me. And yeah, I feel like they would step in if anything went wrong. But I was just, always in the back of my mind and just but you're an almost 80-year-old, small Asian grandmother. If anybody wanted to attack you, there's not much you could do.
Yeah. And it seems like they're targeting a lot of older women. I mean, I know they're targeting across the boards, but there seem to be, which is even more cowardice, that they're targeting older Asian women. It's
yes, they're going after our elders because they're the only people who could not defend themselves, or because you have that thing where you can't attack children because usually they're with their parents. And they're in a group. Elders are the only ones that would be alone, because they're independent, but still physically weaker because of their old age. Which it is terrible.
Horrible. It's been a hard thing to watch, and I can only imagine, like I said, seeing stuff that's happened time and time again with our community. It's been a hard thing to watch, and and I've learned a lot, how much that when people come here, they have to change their names to to indoctrinate themselves. And, you know, it should have been something that I realized, but it's just something that it never dawned on me how much of, you know, little things of your culture that have to be stripped away to come to this country. You know, I wish that would change. You know, it would be nice to learn, you know, people's real names instead of, you know, their US given name that they, you know, give themselves.
Yeah, so to speak to that, I'd like to say it's kind of even sadder that some of the immigrants who come here and do so are almost proud to assimilate into US culture. They're proud to be that, you know, lapdog of the white man, where it's like, oh yeah, you're the good minority. But I guess what I want to say is it heartens me that the generation that's up and coming, my generation, is kind of taking a closer lens to this and looking and saying, wait, we don't want to be your lapdogs. We want to be people. We want to be on equal footing. We don't want our privilege to be conditional.
Yeah. And then the same thing with the Black community. The younger this generation is what is, you know, driving a lot of the BLM movement. They're you know, they're the ones who are out front on the front lines of this. So I think if anybody can change it, it's your generation. You know, the younger generation who are, you know, college age or high school age that are, you know, saying, no, I'm not gonna live the way my grandparents lived or my, you know, even my parents lived. I'm gonna change this. And that's what we need to change it. It helps because we got to stand up for ourselves because we've been taking this for too long.
Right. And I'd like to add that I think the reason why we're seeing a lot more unity now, not to erase the unity in the past, you know, in the civil rights movement, the Black and Asian communities marched together. I don't know how that narrative got lost.
Yeah.
But now with the rise of the internet, we have more direct connections to each other, where we're not playing this game of cross-cultural telephone, where you only have people who are telling you that one story that sticks in their head about how some other community has mistreated them. So like just through my TikTok comments, I see some people who are very open and like welcoming this POC unity with open arms. They're eager to unite and accept like at least me or, you know, the Asian community and anything that we can work towards unity. And I see others who are like, but then tell your people to stop following us around in stores, or then I hear narratives of my own. It's like, oh, but then the Black people will rob you, but like these things, you have to think how many, like out of how many interactions has this one bad interaction happened?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? Are you actually talking about an issue, or are you just making a big deal out of something that happened to you?
Well, it's also actually part of my thing. That big thing I had to say was also the media has made it worse because like you watch movies and it's always, you know, an Asian shop owner and there's a Black person and there's conflict. And it's like, that's all that's been shown. They don't show, I mean, unless you want to talk about like the Rush Hour movies with Jackie Chan and I can't remember his name, the Black actor, but even they banter and they say things like stereotypes back and forth. But at least it's, you know, it's done it's them saying it. But it's like there's such a stereotype, the stereotypes that are portrayed in movies and shows, it keeps this thing going.
Yeah. And yeah, so by the virtue of the internet, we can individually go out and, well, not go out, but like meet people from the other communities and really exchange our stories, our struggles, and then connect with each other, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, me too. I mean, that's how like TikTok has got me. I've messaged a few people after I see their their posts, and I'm like, you know what, I want to, that person's interesting and they're saying something that I really would like to sit down and talk to them about. Us talking, whether it be like this or sitting down at a table and breaking bread, that is the only way that biases are going to change, and everybody's misconception of what we are as people is going to change. Of course, we all have, cultural differences, and our heritage might be different, but there's probably a lot, no, not probably, there is a lot more that is similar about us than there is different.
Exactly. For example, like something, it's a little bit funny, it comes to mind. The uniting factor of all POC is rice.
True, it's true. It is true.
Yeah, like, and our food, like the food culture alone just has so much to offer between all of our communities. It just, and I love food. So it's,
Me too.
yeah, it's a great opportunity, or kind of horizon goal, at least, to kind of at least meet up and exchange our foods or something.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Yeah. I think if more people sat down and talked face to face, they would understand that we have a lot of the same issues and a lot of the same feelings, and we might come from a different perspective. We're both in New England, so we're coming from a New Englander's perspective. It might be it's different from somebody who lives in the South, but we can all sit down and say, oh, actually I spoke to somebody who was brought up in Georgia, and he said that parts of New England remind him of Georgia just because of the way things are set up. And I was kind of like, really? In Atlanta, he was like, yeah. So just by sitting down and actually talking to people, you find out, oh, we are a lot of alike.
Right, yeah, and it's just, I don't want to presume anything, but it only takes a handful of those pioneers to go out and make these connections that can gradually, draw the two communities closer and closer together until you finally reach that unification.
Definitely. And like I said, I've always often wondered why we didn't realize that white supremacy has put a wedge between us. And granted, as the two communities have allowed the wedge to get further and further, but I think if we came together more and we could start to understand each other more, things would get better, and we could be there for each other and fight against white supremacy together.
Right, yeah. I feel like the people who have been saying this have been around for a very long time. But again, it comes back to the internet has finally given them a mouthpiece to connect with others and amplify their message. Before, I think the communities would have just written them off as, you're crazy, or you're too naive. Like this is too reduced for our argument here. But I'm hopeful now that with all this instant communication that we can have and so much mass communication that we can have, we will progress in our struggles.
I agree, and I think if we take anything from what's been going on, I think, like I said, even just from what I'm seeing on TikTok, for the most part, that the communities are coming together. There was a video that I duetted where she was saying that the only people who are really standing up for us right now is the Black community. And I was like, she was like, they understand what we're going through. And we might not know your full situation, but we know they're helping us. And I think we have to help each other. I also want to actually touch upon how much were you teased at all? For how much were you not teased at all, but how much were you teased growing up?
So since I'm in New England, my in elementary school there was one other Asian kid, um, and everyone else was white. Specifically, everyone else was Italian. Um, so it was very homogenous for them, um, and they would have all these. They would know each other's culture, and everyone's Catholic, so everyone just is on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Um, so just because I was different, there was already teasing there, and um, then yeah, there was my lunches, and um, yeah, my physical features or my language. Um, I think one time I remember in first grade it was Chinese New Year, and I wore like the traditional Chinese like Qing Dynasty kind of era traditional clothing,
Hmm.
and it had like this kind of like long skirt kind of thing, along with like a button shirt and pants underneath. But people mocked me for that, or I would have people. I remember in high school, when I was a freshman, a lot of people would just walk by. Hey, it's the Asian weekend. I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? um, or yeah, people walk. Yeah, like I said before, people walk by. Oh, ching chong, bing bong, ling long. Do you know what I'm saying? Or yeah. And then from middle school on to high school, there were all these less overt things like, oh, of course he's good at math. He's Asian. Oh, of course he's good at school. He's Asian. Blah blah. But like, why would you presume that about me? And I would start to take issue with it, and they'd be like, what? I'm just complimenting you. You don't know how to take a compliment. Um, or when I was in high school, it was my senior year, and so the first three class ranks we were all Asian, and so they call us the trifecta, and I was like, why are you collectivizing, why are you grouping us like this?
Yeah.
Like we're not. And like they love to like, I don't know, I can't explain it in words, but like that tone of like looking at us as like children or pets or something, like as if we belong in a zoo. And I was just really angry about that, and I knew if I said anything, if I acted on it, people would be like, what the hell is wrong with him?
Yeah.
So I had to just like keep this inside and try not to react. And it's just like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. My personal safety, my basic physical needs are not being like infringed upon, but it'd be nice not to have this to worry about.
Yeah, I fully understand that. I was one of the only few Black kids that went to my school. When I got into high school, it was a little bit different because there were more people of color who went to my high school. But growing up, I was one of the few Black kids in my school, so I fully understand what you're saying. I got teased a lot in school, so I understand that. What is the biggest stereotype that people think of the Asian community that really grates at you?
Oh, this is a good one. Let me think about this. So I guess like how I mentioned before, that, oh, of course you're good at this. It's because you're Asian. Like it because this is because of my personal lived experience. But like this, by assigning it to my race, they're discounting my personal achievements.
Yeah.
Like I worked hard for this, and you're just gonna chalk it up to my race. Or they'd be like, oh my goodness, so many times where we'd be playing like one of those games, review games in class, and they'd be like, hey, no fair, that team has 3 Asian people and we got none. I'm like, again, what the hell are you saying? Like, if you're insecure, just say it, please. It's not because of my race, it's because of my my hard work and my like diligence in studying, or just me paying attention in class. But like these people are just like, oh no, it's because you're Asian.
Yeah, sometimes microaggressions hurt more than the flat out racism, because it's like you'd almost rather somebody be honest with you and be like, I'm racist, than throwing little jabs at you about, you know, your culture or your, you know, who you are. It's the little slide comments that are sometimes even worse.
Yeah, I frequently do say I respect the outwardly like overt racists more than these, like, you know, the ones that you find in the South more than the ones you find here in the North, because the ones here in the North, they'll hide behind anything to say, oh, I'm not racist.
Yeah.
They'll start doing mental gymnastics. They don't want to own up to their own actions. Whereas in the South, they'll say it and they'll be proud. Like, at least you can respect that they had the courage. Like, they stand behind their word. But here, no, it's they have like spineless kind of like, oh no, I would never be a racist. If you call them a racist, if you say that they're doing racist things, they'll call you a racist back. Why are you generalizing all white people as racist?
Yeah, I think sometimes they don't, and I'm not defending it. I think they don't really comprehend that they are racist by saying these little things that aren't little to us, because we're, you know, it's thrown at us. They are racist for saying those things. And I mean, there's different degrees of racism. You know, if you're a Klans member riding down the street in your robe, yeah, you're a mega racist. But if you're saying things that have been said to you and things that have been said to me, yes, you're still a racist. You might not be this neon black flashing sign, but you're still a racist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So since you've been in college, have you noticed a difference in how people are?
Oh yes. So my college is, I want to say, infinitely more diverse than my high school. My high school is 80% white. And it's just, it's a different world. I get to, well, finally have like actual Asian friends of my own who are proud to be Asian and not proud to be the white man's pet, which is what the limited people that I came into contact with in high school, a good like half of them were. And it's refreshing to make like Chinese friends, Asian friends, Black friends, Latinx friends, Jewish friends, and some white friends. But like that's not new, because in high school that's pretty much all I had. But yeah, it's the diversity it's like very, like it's very tangible. You can feel how it adds to your experience, your worldview and your life, just like very foundationally. Definitely. And it's been amazing. Yeah.
Have you experienced any racism at college?
No, not anything I can remember. Nothing significant, I would say.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to touch upon before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing conversation. I've been wanting to sit down with somebody from the Asian community, because I have been heartbroken watching what you guys have been going through as a community. Like I said, as a Black person, I understand the what's going on. I don't understand your exact being in your shoes, but I understand what's going on, and it's been hard to watch. And I'm glad you took up my offer to come talk to me, because these are conversations that need to be had. You know, people need to hear your voice. You know, people need to hear it from all different people, but especially from somebody who's in the Asian community and can talk about what's going on.
And I'm so glad that you invited me onto this interview because, and that I'm one of the first Asian voices to speak on this. I think it's exceedingly important for people to make that brave first step and get out there and, you know, just stick your neck out there,
Yeah.
and see what happens. Because without that, how are we going to connect? How are we going to unite? How are we going to finally flip this system that has been oppressing us for so long?
Yes. Yes. And I want to say you can call me sister anytime you want.
My brother too. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Logan, for coming on. And I'm Mizzy, and I'm a mixed girl in a mixed up world.